We might get a oh, we're live. I thought we were going to get some kind of count-in. Let's see. I'm just going to go to the YouTube. I'm going to go to the YouTube channel and check to see what is going on here.
One watching.
Live. One watching, but I don't see any video there. Here we go. All right, we are live, guys. We are live. All right, excellent. We're here. Fuck it, we'll do it live. We'll go live. That's
do it live.
That's what we're doing. Daddy's words.
I know.
Right. Okay. Well, Crises and Andy, welcome back to the Once Bitten podcast, and for this end of year review. And the reason I wanted to do it live is because we do these end of year reviews, or we do a macro catch up and whatever else, and we talk about all of this stuff. And it takes me 2 or 3 days to get it edited and shipped, and by then it's all changed again. So, like, screw it. Let's do it live. Let's do an end of year review. We'll do the macro, we'll do the micro, we'll do the Bitcoin, we'll do the fun stuff, we'll do everything that we can remember that has happened throughout 2023 in our crazy little bubble land, and try and unpick it, and perhaps we'll get some projections for 2024 as well. But no price predictions, Andy. I know you're itching to give us the moon juice over there. But before we do anything, we have to let Lauren ask the first question.
Yeah.
Well, since you guys keep coming back so much, I don't really have many questions. So I guess I have to ask the famous question I did last year. What was your favorite thing you got for Christmas?
That's cool.
That's cool. All right. Well, I'll go first. Lauren's great to see you. Princey, it's great to see you. Jesse, aka Crises, it's great to see you.
Always.
I'll go first. So my wife got me a new adjustable weight set. So it's these dumbbells which take up almost no room, and I think they go up to like 75 pounds each. And you can, click, basically rotate them to set the right weight that you want, and it leaves, the right amount on the rack. And so it's a great space saver. I had a sort of a cheaper version of them that my best friend gave to me years ago. And so this is an upgrade, and this will help keep Andy Edstrom strong in the new year 2024.
Man, we've got some really cliche answers here, Andy. Yours was workout stuff. Mine, I think, was golf clubs. So we are quite the millennial guys at this point. I was sort of into golf 10 years ago, and then I decided I just didn't have time for it, or I was living in the city and I got rid of my clubs, and I regretted it. And then I tracked down the exact same, not the exact clubs, but the same model, and bought and got those clubs. Well, had them as a present, but I pointed people in that direction. So I'm excited about that.
What ones are we talking?
I thought you were going to say like you got barbecue gear or something.
Yeah, that'll be next Christmas. So,
well, I did take some notes in preparation for this end of year review, and I have them right here. I don't know if people can read this. Is this backward? I think it's backward.
No, that's right. It was right.
Yeah, there we go. That's what I have in preparation for our year-end review.
Well, we're jumping the gun. We have to find out from Lauren what she got for Christmas.
Oh my God, I got this.
Wait, you want to run and get it?
I can go run and get it.
She's gonna run and get it, guys.
There's a lot of excitement there. Okay.
She's more excited than Jesse is about his golf clubs. Let's put it that way.
I think that's fair. I mean, yeah, at that age, your neurotransmitters are just stoked about everything. So,
well, it's great to hear you're getting into the golf. I know Pierre Rochard is coming for us hard, but I'm a golfer too.
You're a golf guy. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and please come to Madeira and join the hole-in-one championship, the whole coiner championship.
Oh, I love it.
Okay.
Right. Okay. It should be a little Ryder Cup going on at Bitcoin ATLANTIS in Madeira.
Nice.
Sorry, we're still talking about golf.
Well, this is
Yeah.
way more important.
Okay, she is correct, ladies and gentlemen. This is way more important.
Boom.
Oh, cool.
Ooh.
Little hodler.
Love it.
But it's like the
Love
Princess
it.
Hotel version.
From the Princess Hotel. So we're shilling, first of all, Lena's Little Hodler
Yeah.
and Mark's Princess Hotel. And Claire and I picked this up from Mark in October. Yeah, it was October that we were staying there. November that we stayed there in the hotel.
That's awesome.
Oh, and I did get silver earrings, but this is way better.
That's
Little
beautiful.
hodler shout out.
And what did I get for Christmas?
A lot more stuff.
Wait, but what are the two things I always ask for every year but never get?
Peace and quiet.
I thought it was gonna be socks.
All a man wants in his house, Jesse, is some peace and quiet on Christmas Day.
Peace and
Right?
quiet.
We make sure he doesn't get it.
No.
I noticed that. So it sounds like every year you're asking for that, so you haven't received it yet.
Not yet. Still waiting. One day Santa will deliver, and I'll be sitting there and I'll be like, "Oh, this sucks."
He will, yeah.
I remember when the kids were young and like they would come and like jump on me in the morning. Yeah, that'd be. We might all be living on some big ranch Citadel farm by then, anyway. And
I thought you were gonna say Mars. I was like, no.
Oh, there's a question. I'm curious. In your world traveling, world schooling endeavors, is there like a next destination that you guys have earmarked?
well, we're off to the UK for the next month. Yeah, just over a month. There's a Sudbury Valley School there in Kent, southeast of England, which we're going to go check out. Which runs Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and the kids can get a little bit. It's like a conference, when you just need to go and be in meet space with like-minded people. So these guys are going to go and check that place out. So they'll be surrounded by 12 to 17-year-old kids. No, probably 8 to 17-year-old kids, all in a self-directed education facility, and that'll be cool. Then we're off to Madeira for a couple of weeks to do the thing. Over there, the Bitcoin ATLANTIS conference. And then we have possible house move coming up, but also on the cards, Poland, Oslo, Prague. Yeah, so it's great. We get to mix all of this stuff with the Bitcoin conferences and meetups. And we'll be hitting meetups in the UK as well. So meeting a lot of the British plebs over there who are doing some stand-up work, actually. It's great to see.
That's awesome.
I'm
Big
jealous.
year.
I'm actually going to make it to England, I think, in the spring. We had a big trip planned and it got torpedoed by COVID. And so we're pulling out the old itinerary, making it happen. I'd like to go to, I'm planning on stopping through Bletchley Park, see where the cryptographic activity analysis code cracking went down under Alan Turing and crew. We'll do some of the normal stuff, London. We're going to get to Scotland as well. I've never been to Scotland, so that'll be
awesome,
cool.
Man. Can you stop by the Tavistock Institute as well and check out what other psyops they've got coming up?
Good idea. I'm sure they got a full inventory. Lots in the pipeline coming.
Oh my God, never ending. Lauren, did you have any further questions for these fine gentlemen? Do you remember meeting these guys in Miami?
I actually do. I remember that. I do.
I
Remember
also
that.
remember that. That was a good
Yeah,
time.
it was. I was starstruck, seeing Lauren, the best Bitcoin podcaster, in person. I for a second I didn't know what to say, and then I said hello. So
yeah, I was actually taken aback seeing Jesse in real life. That was the first time I'd met Andy the year prior. But you're like a solid 6'2", man. Like it's like, whoa, look at this dude. Like, you don't get that on the Zoom.
You don't get that in this little box. It's true.
So that was
I'm pushing
no,
6'3" actually, but it's if
I said
if I really
solid.
stand up straight.
Yeah.
I remember meeting Jesse for the first time and also being impressed by his stature. I met him in a park once to talk private key handling and security. And I brought a chair. I think he brought a chair, and it was like a little folding chair, and he barely fit in it. We're just hanging out in the park
Chatting
as
in the
one
park.
does, talking Bitcoin.
halfway
Took
between
in
both. of us.
self-custody with your mobile phones wrapped in tinfoil, no doubt.
Believe I left it in the car.
Yep.
Right.
That was one of the requirements. No devices on person.
All right, guys. Well, we got a lot to talk about because, as usual in Bitcoin space, a lot has gone down in the space of 1 year. Where, I mean, do you have any ideas where we should kick this off? I mean, we should have made a list, but that would have been far too prepared.
Yeah. When you were talking about what has happened in the last year, it made me jump back to like, okay, where were we a year ago? Like, it's sentiment and like current events. So FTX, the bottom had just fallen out of FTX. Bitcoin price was at like 16,000. That was a year ago. And it was all doom and gloom, and like, you know, people talking about Bitcoin's going to 10K, and that narrative had started to become kind of popular. There just was no hope or excitement or enthusiasm, and that's where we were a year ago. It's kind of hard to believe that.
It's
That's
been a lot of
crazy.
water under the bridge. The 10Kers, man. The 10Kers. I've been calling some of them out lately. They don't seem too pleased about it. Yeah, to me, honestly, the FTX implosion, you know, that took it down to 16K, that already seems like a very long time ago to me.
Mhm.
I remember the night it happened was literally beefsteak at my house. And so people were eating tons of meat, probably too much. I definitely ate too much that night. And toward the end of the evening, like, prices going down, and you know, people were in surprisingly good spirits considering the circumstances. But yeah, it was a bit of a gut punch at that moment in time. I will say, you know, kudos to Swan and the Pacific Bitcoin team. It was a phenomenal conference, a phenomenal festival, notwithstanding the price was going down. Bitcoiners knew that this thing wasn't dying. Nevertheless, there were definitely some of the noobs, I think, were were a little bit more down. Those who hadn't been through a cycle yet were a little more nervous.
Yeah, we're gonna
Talking of
have
those,
that again in a few years. We'll have the gut wrenching drop to 60,000 or whatever it will be next time.
yeah. And talking of those who are in their first cycle and might have been feeling a little nervous, not our boy Sailor, who's just announced another 614 million. I can't remember the exact, like, you know, and again, think about how quick that time has flown by.
Yeah.
They first allocated, I believe, August 2020, and he announced September 2020, and then hit the scene. And he's just been an absolute animal for Bitcoin ever since.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a whole. Is it a whole cycle? It's basically almost a whole cycle for him.
Yeah, he started in it was Q3 2020 is when he started, when he came out you know, with his Bitcoin strategy.
I remember it well. And opining that there might be a possibility that he might borrow to buy more Bitcoin.
Yes, you did, Andy.
And he blew the he took that to the nth degree. Let's just say I was not expecting the magnitude that he would take it to. And yeah, he is a motive force in the Bitcoin space for education, for, you know, just strength of conviction. And he has never relented. He can't stop, won't stop. And I think he's right.
Yeah.
So in your circles,
This 100K party is coming fast.
the 100K party, we're still waiting for that, Lauren.
Still waiting. You know who's really waiting for that is Yellow at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Just tune into Yellow's spaces, and all is that the day is a much calmer and nicer place, despite his yelling, which is almost meditation in itself.
It's fantastic.
But Andy, like in your circles, like you're still plugged into mainstream kind of financial markets and whatever else. Is anybody yet talking about MicroStrategy, or are they still this unknown firm that nobody even knows the ticker MSTR? And it's just us Bitcoiners that
I think most people still are not aware. Certainly older generations are not aware, like my, partners who are significantly older than I am. In general, I think they're not aware of this phenomenon yet. Awareness of Bitcoin and education about Bitcoin has taken longer than I thought it would.
Yeah,
I was wrong. I thought we'd be there by now. I knew it would take time, but I didn't think it would take this much time for normie finance people to pay attention. Although at least they're aware of Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin as a brand has definitely spread throughout the space as far as understanding is concerned, or as far as, understanding like what's going on with the ETF versus MicroStrategy versus GBTC or anything else. I think still the sector, the normie finance land is lagging.
All right, mark your bingo cards, viewers. Andy just said ETF, so that's one off. If you've got that on your bingo card, make sure you circle that.
So we on the MicroStrategy point, it's been very interesting to me that at OnRamp we have an advisor who's like a quite senior Wall Street veteran, and he has referred to it a few times as like Saylor just turned this into a Bitcoin ETF, in a way kind of dismissing the like Bitcoin standard reserve strategy, like using Bitcoin as a treasury asset. Kind of like, no, that's not what's actually going on. He's just saw an opportunity to turn it into a de facto ETF, which, and this is from a guy who's bullish on Bitcoin. So it's very interesting to me that like even people who are Wall Street and are bullish on Bitcoin still don't understand what Saylor is seeing or what Saylor is like, putting all of his money on, which is that Bitcoin is the best treasury reserve asset out there, and that that's how you stop the melting ice cube of holding fiat on your balance sheet. So like even for people who are aware of what MicroStrategy is doing, they see a different motive there as like just an opportunistic way to create an attractive business for people to bid up the stock, versus what's actually going on, which is like deeply seeing that this asset is better than holding dollars.
And the good news, one of the good news things about Bitcoin is it can also be both. There's so many ways to win with Bitcoin, so many drivers for adoption and good reasons why people might want to own it, might want to hold it, might want to incorporate it into whatever business activity they're working on. So yeah, I think it can be both.
Absolutely. So Lauren's kicking me under the table, so that can mean only one thing. Either she's seen my beer's getting low and she's worried that I'm hanging out with my friends and my beer's getting low, or she might be getting a little bit bored with the conversation. It's one of those two.
Sometimes the conversation gets a bit too complicated for a 12-year-old.
Okay, so before you go and fill the beer up,
hey Lauren,
before you go and fill the beer up, Andy and Crisis are going to take a go at explaining an ETF to a 12-year-old.
Okay. I'll go with the super simple version. If you want to own something, but you want it to be really easy to buy a piece of that thing, well, there are these companies that put a pool of that together and let people on the stock market buy a little fraction of it. So it's like you're owning a little piece of that, but they make it really easy for you to do that without, in this case with Bitcoin, without having to set up your own wallet and move assets on the Bitcoin network. So basically, it's this way for stock market investors to buy a little slice of a pool of a whole lot of Bitcoin, and make that a lot easier for the investor to do.
Is
There's
the
a whole
acronym,
world-
Andy, is the acronym even misleading? I mean, where's the E?
Exchange traded fund. Yeah. ETF, exchange traded fund. Yeah. I think the way that's well said by Jesse. And the only thing I'd add is that most of the wealth in the world is held in either houses and buildings or brokerage accounts where people hold their stocks and bonds and funds. Lauren, you may have one of those accounts, or if you don't yet, you will probably before too long.
Doesn't that sound fun, Lauren?
Yay!
Yay. It's an account where you own stuff. You can't actually touch the stuff or, interact with it physically or anything like that. You just own pieces of businesses primarily, or other financial assets. And that's where most people have most of the wealth that they've saved over their lifetimes earning, right? They have jobs, they make income, they save it. Some of it they keep in cash and money, and then the rest they invest. And so that's where people have their investments. And now you've got an instrument where you can buy Bitcoin, or at least get, own financial exposure to Bitcoin, own the price basically, in that kind of an account. And for a lot of people, that's a big deal because that's just what they're used to.
Yeah,
All right.
that
You want to go get that
that's
beer?
now she's total mastery of ETFs now, right, Lauren?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
No inside out. All right. Well, thank you.
Right. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Nice seeing you.
See you next
again.
time, Lauren.
Hope
Great to see you, Lauren.
Yeah, see you. Bye-bye.
So should we? I mean, let's stick on that for a little while because it's the hot topic. It's on everybody's radar. Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? People are making predictions. How many have even been? Wait, we already have one in Europe, and nobody seems to care about that. Like it all seems to be eyes on America, and what are the SEC going to do? Because that's going to drive the price and the adoption of other ETFs. How many have been listed? Excuse me. What's the word I'm looking for?
Filed for. It's like about a dozen, I think.
Yeah,
right?
13, I believe.
Yeah, wait, you're right about one thing, Princey. Nobody does care about Europe.
Literally. And it's the ECB even tweeted today that one of their members has come out and said Europe is overbanked, especially in comparison to other countries such as the United States. This is something we're going to be looking at going forward. So they're basically saying we're going to take even more power and centralize even more of this power to us, ourselves, and only us. So look out for next year, more European banks being swallowed up. Like, here's one for 2023. Credit Suisse.
Yeah.
Don't exist anymore. Like, no one's talking about it. No one did talk about it. And then all of a sudden they're gone and swallowed up by UBS.
It was a super deal for UBS. They bought it for a song. They got the government basically to take the downside risk. Again, banks capturing their governments for the benefit of the banksters. I have to agree that Europe is quote unquote overbanked in the sense that Europe still lacks a significant debt capital market. So most of the cash that capitalizes companies in Europe that's not equity capital does come from the banks. In the US, there's a much bigger bond market. The bond market is a much bigger factor. It's especially a bigger factor in the junk area, levered companies, lower quality companies that have lots and lots of debt relative to their capital structures. And so that's been true for a long time. And frankly, it's still true. It's even more true these days as the banks in Europe never really cleared out their balance sheets after the global financial crisis 15 years ago. And so they've still got dead wood sitting on those balance sheets. As a result, they're not extending as much credit. There's this whole market called private credit, which has sprung out of almost nowhere. It's sort of like Bitcoin. Like 15 years ago, basically it didn't exist or barely existed. And now it's huge. There's all these funds that raise capital from investors, from limited partners, and they just go and underwrite loans to mid-sized companies, partly because the banks aren't doing it. It's been a growing factor in Europe. It's been a growing factor in the US as well. And it's kind of grown out of almost nothing in the last decade and a half. It's now It's now like a couple $1 trillion asset class globally out of nothing. It's at least $1 trillion asset class. Sound familiar? Sound like another asset class we know about?
I wasn't aware of the growth of private credit lending like that, but it sort of sounds like there's Europe is overbanked and underbanked. Then if that function is being fulfilled by a different a startup sector of the financial industry, because
that's a good point. That's a good point. Maybe we should say they have too many banks that are in poor shape. They got too many banks that suck.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but bringing it all back to like what that means though, the like overbanked, that phrasing from the EU, it's ridiculous. It's a very kind way to say there's too many people that have access to the modern financial system, and so we need to kick some of those people out. That's bullshit.
Mm-hmm. How many banks did you
would be a lot better if there was a way to access the global financial system with a costless bank account in your pocket.
Jesse, you're talking pie in the sky stuff right now.
Yeah, that's impossible in the digital era.
Yeah. How many banks did you guys lose in the US this year? You had some real big ones, but there are so many other smaller ones that get swallowed up in that as well.
It is funny that the banking crisis feels like that was 2+ years ago to me at least, and that was in March, I think.
Yeah, SBV, right? Was March? Yep. Is that right?
Yep. Silicon Valley Bank, First Republic, Silvergate also went under, and then Signature got taken out back and shot unceremoniously, despite the fact that they were technically still okay in terms of their solvency, I believe. I'm trying to think if there are any other besides that. I mean, that's a big enough list. That's the biggest crisis since 2008 right there. And then Credit Suisse internationally. and what came of that was the BTFP. What was that Bank Term Funding Program?
That's it. You got it.
Yeah.
There was a $1 trillion, I can't remember if it was $1 trillion or $2 trillion, blank check that the expectation was we'll be willing to backstop underwater securities up to $1 trillion or $2 or something like that for a year. And so that's going to come due soon in a couple months. And I'm sure they will unwind that program and no longer extend that credit. Right? Or will we, of course, have that turn into a permanent program that expands over time as underwater securities become a bigger and bigger problem for every financial institution?
There's nothing more permanent, right, Andy?
That's right. Nothing more permanent than a temporary government program. Was that who's the famous economist? Was that Friedman? I think it gets attributed to Milton Friedman. Somebody just published a biography on Milton Friedman recently, which I heard well reviewed. I haven't read it yet, but yeah, I think last I looked, the BTFP had somewhere between 100 billion and 200 billion still outstanding, and I think the balance had actually gone up, not down, in the last 6 months. It's been a little while since I looked at it, but yeah, it has not gone away. There are still banks that have assets parked with the Fed at par value. It's
and that's one of the misconceptions. I remember arguing with people about this in the spring, where like, you know, people would say like, oh, but it's only $100 billion. Like that's all that has been used. Like, what's the big deal? Like, that's a drop in the bucket. But it's a blank check for future use, because, you know, this is a problem that these are unrealized losses that sit on banks' balance sheets, and you only use that program when you are looking to realize those losses, and you need to make a change on what's sitting on your balance sheet, and then you call in that get out of jail free card in order to true up your investment on that. So it's a blank check for the future, and that's the problem, rather than, you know, how much has been used. So it's no surprise that it's been all year, it has been slowly ticking up in terms of how much has been used, as, you know, banks inevitably have circumstances change, and they need to, over time, free up the assets that are trapped in underwater securities, and then boom, they're calling on the government to fill in the gap. And yeah, like, you know, that'll keep happening. That'll keep continuing. In many ways, I think the banking crisis is on pause, because the BTFP you know, restored enough confidence in the market, in the going concern status of the banks everywhere, because suddenly the, you know, underwater securities are no longer a problem at all. So what's the problem? You know, why have a bank run if there's a blank check sitting there? But, you know, the structural issue of high interest rates is still there, and, you know, maybe coming down a bit in 2024, but all those securities are still underwater, and the blank check, I guess, is the stopgap that allows for that problem to not precipitate into a crisis. But that only happens, you know, you only avoid a crisis because the blank check is there to step in and create money to fill the holes on banks' balance sheets at the expense of holders of fiat currency, who are then seeing their holdings diluted, because now there's more money in existence because of that blank check.
And the Federal Reserve, I believe, in 2022, it's now 0%, right?
Yep.
So sorry, what, 0%?
Sorry, are you talking about? Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking about the reserve requirements.
Reserve requirements, yep. Yes.
Okay. Yeah,
0%,
not 0%. Reserve requirements, yes, 0%, and that has been the case for a little over a year, I think. And you know,
correct.
It's not going to change.
They actually, so I remember. Let me see if I get the timeline right. But I want to say that in COVID, they changed the rule to have zero reserve requirements if you held treasuries. And then I think they reversed it. And then they reversed it again, obviously, because so it was gone for a moment, sort of like QE, right? It's like, yes, they could stop doing it for some period of time. They may even be able to shrink the balance sheet for some period of time, but generally speaking, it doesn't tend to last very long. And yeah, overall, more and more debt, more and more credit gets built up in the system over time. So we get this clear trend with some sort of short-term reversals.
So you're right, Andy. I'm on the webpage now. The first announcement, I believe, March 15th, 2020. The board reduced reserve requirement ratios to 0% effective March 26th, 2020. This action eliminated reserve requirements for all depository institutions.
There you go.
That's it.
Yeah, and Andy's right that the transition from one status quo to the next comes with like it's sort of waffling between two states until the new state is just permanent from that point forward. I think we probably have reached that place now. And then also to Andy's point of the Fed tried to unwind its balance sheet in 2018 and it got it rolled off 14% of the assets on the balance sheet, and they've been trying to roll off the assets on their balance sheet right now, and I think they're around 14% right now. But now with talk of pivoting to QE on the horizon, I think the other variable here too, though, is that they've managed to find like creative ways to have off balance sheet stimulus, like the BTFP, which doesn't sit on anybody's balance sheet but is a blank check for the future.
Yeah, you got reverse repo, you got the Treasury General Account. There's all these piggy banks, accounts basically that are real money, right? I mean, I don't know, I think reverse repo peaked to like 2 trillion something. The TGA, I think, is in the mid hundreds of billions. It's significant. Monkeying around, if Yellen wants to add or subtract a few $100 billion from the markets, she can do that, just like the Fed can do that. And so even if Powell and the Fed are moving somewhat programmatically, and I'm not saying that they are, but even if you assume that they are, there's still levers that can be pulled by other branches of the government, especially branches of the government that are directly elected or appointed by those who are directly elected, like the president, who's facing a re-election campaign right now and a re-election in less than a year.
And we just celebrated 110 years of the formation of the Federal Reserve.
Yay.
What'd you do to celebrate, Princey?
I reread The Secrets of the Federal Reserve by Eustace Mullins.
Classic. Yeah, you've been on top of that. You've been popularizing that. I had not heard of it before you raised it to me and raised it to your audience. So I'm glad you brought it to our attention. Not
enough Bitcoiners have read that book.
I have to confess that I read the first quarter of Creature from Jekyll Island, and it just made me so outraged and mad that I couldn't keep reading.
No. Did you even make it to the sinking of the Lusitania in Creature from Jekyll Island?
I think I did. That's probably telling that I can't.
That's when I really started getting angry. It's like,
I was angry from the beginning. Overnight Christmas break, push it through vote. My goodness.
And then so I was reading the Secrets of the Federal Reserve, and I think it was in that book that I became aware of the fact that Nelson Aldrich, who was the head of the U.S. Treasury, I think at that time. Well, he was the one that held the meeting at Jekyll Island. He was the one that brought everybody together. His daughter married John D. Rockefeller Jr.
Huh.
You're like, what? Like, no, stop. So I'm straight on Wikipedia and wherever else. And I'm like, and sure enough, there it is in plain sight. I'm like, yep. So you're telling me, hang on a minute, you've got representatives of that dude's banking concerns at a secret meeting in Jekyll Island being hosted by his son's father-in-law. And we're the crazy fucking conspiracists, right? Like, this is what just, it's like, guys, it's here. They're not even trying to hide it. It's on Wikipedia. Just go and look. It's all there. It's unbelievable. Truly unbelievable.
Yeah. What a convenient term, conspiracy theorists. Because,
conspiracy facts. How about conspiracy facts?
Yeah, yes. Too often. Of course, people, human beings conspire to pull off shit all the time. Of course that happens. And
you conspired to launch OnRamp, right?
Yeah.
That's what you do. You build like an idea, you pull in the right people, you bounce ideas around, you throw shit against the wall, you see what sticks, and you launch a company. That wasn't a theory. That happened.
Yeah, that's right. By the strict definition, that's a conspiracy of ideas right there, and energies to manifest something in the world. That's what a conspiracy is.
So here we are trapped for 110 years under this Federal Reserve Act, which was pushed through in record time. 23rd of December, 1913, when half of the congressmen and women, I believe, had already left to go on holiday. So it wasn't even full representation, because it got, the way I understand my history, it got turned down. Then they worked through the night to get another one in front on the floor, that on that 23rd of deck, whatever day of the week that was, where most of the office had cleared out. Yeah. And then it got signed in. Like that, it's just classic.
It's interesting too that, like, you know, the founding fathers, like, this was what they were afraid of, and so I think for the next century, that they resisted a national banking apparatus, or undid it. I forget which early president was responsible for dismantling the first national banking system, but
Jefferson, I think.
It was Jackson, wasn't it? Wasn't it Bank of the United States was reversed by Jackson, I think?
Yeah, one of those. I should brush up on my early.
He was a big populist.
Hamilton tried to bring one in, right?
Right.
He was trying to bring in
the whole
a central bank.
Thing that has been glorified in pop culture of late, because it's all about collectivism, and that has become our culture, is antithetical to what Jefferson and Jackson and Madison were all about, which was libertarian economic values, and we had this country founded in that of like true liberty, and now fast forward 250 years, and we've normalized things that would be tantamount to like a form of slavery from the past, of like, we have to tithe the government a third of our earnings every year. That's the definition of like, well, some type
2 points. You've hit on two planks of the Communist Manifesto there. A progressive income tax, which was unconstitutional. Income tax itself was unconstitutional. A progressive one, they'd just taken it to the next level. And the fifth plank was a central bank.
Interesting. Yeah.
All I heard was a third of your income, which is great news, because Jesse has left California and moved to Texas, where you do only pay a third of your income because there's no state income tax. Me, I'm still I still haven't figured things out. I still haven't left California. My tax burden is even substantially higher than a third. It's so painful.
Yeah, I was sick of paying near half.
Although it is the one good thing about it is the forced hodl to some degree. It's a little bit like having Gox coins. You ain't never selling them if you can avoid it, because the tax bill is too painful, at least if they're AYC coins, which unfortunately most of mine are.
All right, so did we do the ETF justice? Because the noise out there is deafening, especially going into 2024, as we know, as Bitcoiners, is going to be part of the full-on hype cycle. We're coming into the halving event, and newbies are going to be led down the wrong path. They're going to be pointed in all kinds of different directions. And as many Bitcoin podcasts are out there still are not enough, because we're not reaching enough people to warn them that this ETF is, and I'm going to reference here Farrington's article, Trust Me, Bro. I don't know if anybody's ever read that. It's a brilliant article that he dropped after the original filing from BlackRock. And he actually brings up a point from Anil Said So. So that's Anil on Twitter, which he found a hidden gem in the BlackRock ETF filing. And I'll just read the underlined sections here, and I'll get your guys' take on it. Buried in the pages and pages of this application. In the event of a hard fork of the Bitcoin network, the sponsor, i.e. BlackRock, will, if permitted by the terms of the trust agreement, use its discretion to determine which network should be considered the appropriate network.
Yeah, is this surprising though? I mean, every holder of coins, Princey, and in this case, it's a company, it's an institution. They get to decide which is the real Bitcoin. People who were here early enough for the hard fork, I wish I had been. By the way, it's not like I was waiting for the fork to happen because I was nervous. It's because I couldn't fund my Coinbase account fast enough. It's like desperate to jam fiat into this new system because I just learned about Bitcoin, and I didn't get to buy it till literally the day after the hard fork. But yeah, I think that every holder, whoever that holder is, whether it's an individual or it's a committee or it's a company or Michael Saylor or whatever, gets to make a decision about where they want to continue to hold their wealth, whether they want to dump one of the hard fork coins or hold on to it to see what happens. And that's just the reality. And so that's true for any institution or, quote unquote institution or group of individuals that collectively either own or just control. They don't own in the case of the ETF, they control on behalf of a third party as fiduciaries. So that's definitely an ongoing concern. There's another point I want to...
Go ahead.
No, another point I want to bring up, which I hadn't thought of before, but I got from Arthur Hayes in his recent letter, was actually if coins get held as they're supposed to in the ETF, their velocity goes to zero, right? So there will be no transacting and therefore no transaction fee generation for any coins that just sit in an ETF ultimately. So taken to the logical conclusion, if too many coins end up in such arrangements, the network dies because there's literally no activity. And as the block subsidy, goes asymptotically toward zero, you got to have transaction fees. Now, is this something I'm concerned about? No, I'm not worried about the ETF locking up, 20% of the coins or 30% of the coins or the majority of the coins. I don't see that as likely. That's the genius. One of the genius elements of the supply schedule is enough early Bitcoiners who understand the thing have enough coins that, they're not going to let those all slip into the fingers of Wall Street. Mm-hmm. But it is a simple fact that there does have to be velocity on the network. The network ultimately does have to be used for actual transactions so that the miners make transaction fees and are rewarded in the long run for continuing to validate blocks, construct blocks.
Please don't lead us to the spam conversation just yet. We will get there, I promise. Jesse.
Yeah.
It goes on to say there's more small print here.
Yep.
There is no guarantee that the sponsor will choose the digital asset that is ultimately the most valuable fork. They're leaving a leg out to choose whatever they want, and therefore can either rug pull all of their investors. So they're stockpiling right now Bitcoin. They're going to shill the ETF to the high heavens. People are going to run in thinking that this is all great. I'm now long Bitcoin. 18 months down the line, there's going to be maybe a hard fork or soft fork event, which ties us back into what's going on right now, possibly. And the small print gets sent around to everybody. I remember when we said, well, this is one of those moments, and we're going to choose this fork vis-a-vis this is now your Bitcoin holdings pegged, we promise, to the other Bitcoin holdings that we have, which are now completely in our sole control and could probably rehypothecate and do whatever the hell we like with.
Yeah, it's a very plausible scenario of what if this is some sort of attack. So I have a lot of things to say here because funny enough, funny enough, I'm rather sympathetic to what BlackRock has had to do, specifically because I have set up multiple Bitcoin investment funds at this point, 2 now. And this is a topic that you have to, as a manager of a fund, deal with. And there really is no good solution to it, except to do what BlackRock has done in terms of carving out the authority to make that decision. Because the alternative doesn't make sense from a fund mechanics point of view. Because if you were to say, we'll preserve both sides of a fork, that's all well and good for people who were in the fund before the fork. But then if anybody wants to get into the fund after the fork, what do? Do you buy an equal number of Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin with their money, or do you put it into Bitcoin because that's Bitcoin and that's what they want? And so, you can see how that becomes a logistical problem. And of course, it's all in the context of each investor owns a percentage of the existing pool of assets in the fund. And with regard to an ETF, it needs to be what it says it is, which is Bitcoin. So it's a one asset pool. But now you're talking about suddenly you have 2 different assets in that pool going for historical holders, and then going forward, it's going to be just one for any new entrants. So you have to reconcile that. You have to choose, and you have to switch entirely to one asset or the other. And I've looked at what have various funds done in terms of this provision, and this is actually the standard because there's no good answer that within a fund's mechanics that accommodates the realities of a fork being kind of ambiguous, and you want to allow the investor to maintain control and choice, but at the end of the day, you're running a fund and you have to steer it towards what is the truth, and make sure that that's the only asset in the fund. So I'm sympathetic to BlackRock in that sense, but at the same time, it does create this possibility, for an attack, and that's especially concerning because this is BlackRock who created the ESG idea, and threw their weight behind it, saying a few years ago that they were only going to invest in companies that were positive ESG forces. You're right, which is completely qualitative and makes them kingmakers because they get to say what is and isn't ESG positive. And you could totally have you could have the same sort of mechanics play out here with their ETF of they could throw their weight behind a Bitcoin ESG fork that was going to only allow renewable energy mining through some Rube Goldberg machine of checks and or code behind the scenes, or whitelisted miners, and then that becomes a vehicle for total capture of the network and control of the network. And so they could try to pull that shit, and that would obviously be awful. But what gives me hope is that even if that is this sinister plan that they're trying to put in motion here, I have faith that Bitcoin Cash taught the Bitcoin community, the block size war taught the Bitcoin community what it needs, instilled what it needs, the lessons that needed to be learned there, in order to be, I guess, toxic enough or wary enough or suspicious enough of any kind of large concerted effort with companies backing one side and users backing the other side. And so, the Bitcoin community has survived and emerged victorious through a concerted corporate attack on Bitcoin, in 2017 and learned a lot of lessons about how to navigate that. Some of which are like be toxic, and be suspicious and don't trust, verify, which comes with their downsides, in terms of how pleasant it is to deal with Bitcoiners. But it, I think, is a vital, battle-hardened lesson that Bitcoiners have taken away from that, such that I think that even in the scenario where BlackRock has some sinister aim to co-opt the Bitcoin network through the Bitcoin ESG fork and forcing all of the ETF holders to follow that path, well, they're going to lose against the true free market incentives of the Bitcoin network, and Bitcoin Cash 2.0 will happen, and Bitcoin Cash 2.0 on a much larger scale than Bitcoin Cash was. But Bitcoin is on a much larger scale now than it was in 2017. And so I feel I have optimism that even if that is where this goes to, that Bitcoin is growing faster than the efforts to kneecap it are able to scale. And so the Bitcoin Cash attack was a few, at the time, large Bitcoin companies all getting in a back room and doing this deal to try to make Bitcoin Cash win. And that was a large scale attack at the time. The U.S. government attacking it 6 years later would be obviously a much larger attack via BlackRock. But I think Bitcoin will be so much larger, and cat's out of the bag. The lessons from Bitcoin Cash have been learned. And and then at the end of the day, the free market incentives of true Bitcoin continue. So if you're BlackRock, you're kind of screwed, because you can trap investors into an ETF that is going to be converted into Bitcoin ESG, but you cannot prevent the true Bitcoin network from operating and continuing to put out hang a shingle out there saying, here's a free open network for you to conduct your financial activities on, where you won't be censored or stopped, and it's outside of BlackRock or the U.S. government's purview, and that will always be more attractive. So unless BlackRock was to convince some super majority of all coins and existing Bitcoin users to switch over to the Bitcoin ESG version, they just
stop saying Bitcoin ESG. Can we call it BSG? Can we call it BSG?
BSG, BlackRock. What's BSG for? Or Bitcoin SG? I got it.
And bullshit.
Yeah, anyway, so all that to say that I'm at the same time sympathetic with the position that BlackRock and any fund manager is in with regard to how do you deal with forks. And by the way, I wrote a piece about digging into the BlackRock S1 that I think I'll take a little bit of credit. It was part of the inspiration for Alan to write his much better "Trust Me, Bro" version. So I wrote that, Alan read it, and then a few days later he comes out with "Trust Me, Bro," and it was better because he's a better writer. Anyway, so I dug into the BlackRock S1 and found quite a few very concerning things, of which this was one. But at the same time, I'm a little sympathetic to the reality that it's kind of an impossible problem to solve if you're running a Bitcoin fund. However, there is that possibility that is laying the groundwork for a future attack. But I still have hope that I'm optimistic that attack would prove as effective as Bitcoin Cash was, with enough hindsight. That was a lot.
That was a lot.
That's a lot.
And
I think the whatever. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, kind of leads us into where we are at closing out this year with, let's call it a cesspool. because it's not a mempool anymore. We've got all of this nonsense jamming up the block space, and we've got a divided community again. And it's a classic psyop, right? Divide and conquer. We are being divided over the very definition of the word spam or censor or censorship, which Giacomo has been talking about. And it's all just weird that this is happening at this point at the same time the ETFs are on the shelf waiting for the rubber stamp. At the same time, Senator Warren, who everybody knows and loves, who is over 300, I believe, for getting bills passed, is talking about banning pencil and paper because, ladies and gentlemen, here is an unhosted wallet. We must ban this technology, ladies and gentlemen. We take it out of the hands of us terrorists that are on this freaking call right now. I mean, here we're back to conspiracy theories again, guys. Like, what's going on?
All right. Well, I'll say one thing about the Senator Warren stuff. Yeah, I mean, it is bizarre seeing the most anti-bank person in politics ally herself with the big banks. Had this sort of chummy Q&A with Jamie Dimon for all the world to see. Really, talk about clown world. So there's that. The second thing I'll say is, take action for Americans out there. Before I take a couple days off here, I'm gonna write a couple quick letters to my senators, tell them what I think of this nonsense. It doesn't take that long, to be honest. There's a lot of models out there, examples you can find on Twitter or elsewhere. I think maybe Preston Pish might have put something out. I think maybe the Swan guys did too. So I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to let my opinion be known to my senators. My opinion being that this is an infringement of my privacy and my rights, which are protected by the U.S. Constitution. So that's that. The Ordinal stuff is interesting. I think the lesson I draw from that is, be careful with soft forks, be careful with upgrades, be careful with any changes to the code, because they may have unintended consequences. This is a great example of I think, unintended consequence, which is all this block space being consumed at lower cost, lower fee than one would ordinarily have to pay for a Bitcoin transaction. And that's an inefficiency. I mean, I think it's a mistake. I think it's path dependent. I think we are where we are. It's worse to roll back the upgrades. It's worse to, unless it's really a life or death situation for Bitcoin, I think it's worse to try and change back. So I don't really think we should try and reverse it or anything like that. But I do think that it is a good reminder that it's a good idea to go very slowly when upgrading Bitcoin. I do think one of the things Saylor's right about is it ain't broke. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to optimize it more. It's already reached network effect. It's already being really good at what it's supposed to be really good at being, which is very fully limited supply, uncensorable, unconfiscatable hard money. And that's or a hard monetary asset, let's say. And that's the main and most important thing. And clever engineers trying to make it just a little bit better may find that making it just a little bit better comes with costs that they don't anticipate. So that's my thoughts and feelings about those two topics that you just raised there, Princey.
Yeah. If I recall, the Ordinal stuff can get block space for a quarter the cost of normal transactions, which is such a mistake in hindsight. And all of this all the technicals are way outside of what I'm, knowledgeable about with Bitcoin. So yeah, it's such a shame that we find ourselves in that place. And a question I've been wondering recently is like, why can't we soft fork to patch that 4x problem? And I'm sure there's a technical reason why that's a very stupid and naive thing for me to wonder about. But it is a shame that Princey, you're right that like ultimately we're probably being divided here on a topic and being softened up.
I think the question is here: are there enough degens out there that give too much of a fuck about monkey JPEGs to have jammed up like the base layer for as long as they have, with no end in sight, or is something else at play?
Right. Yeah, I don't know the economics of it. Like, was that Andy?
Well, he's suggesting it's an attack. Speaking of, conspiracies, it's possible. I don't know the answer. It's definitely worth asking the question. It's definitely worth being suspicious about it, for sure.
Have you followed the money yet?
I haven't found a good trail. Have you?
Okay. Well, Taproot Wizards, right? Raised $7.5 million out of nowhere. The article drops. The article dropped on Bitcoin Magazine and then other places. And then you start just following the, Taproot Wizards, a Bitcoin Ordinals project focused on advancing Bitcoin's capabilities, has secured $7.5 million in funding to assemble a team of top-tier developers to build on Bitcoin. The investment round was led by Standard Crypto. By the way, this is the only hyperlink in the whole article. Bitcoin Magazine, look at you. Where are the other hyperlinks for Geometry, Collider Ventures, Starkware, UTXO Management, Bitcoin Frontier Fund, MasterKey, and Newman Capital participating in the raise as well?
Yeah.
Because when you do start following the money and you look at these websites, one, they're shit, like really shit. And two, there's no mention on their portfolio page of having invested in Taproot Wizards. Now, you might think, yeah, it's holiday season. Perhaps they just haven't got around to updating 2 words on their website. Or there's a red flag there somewhere. And then you follow the track of Starkware. I've never heard of Starkware. Have you guys ever heard of Starkware?
I haven't. Have you, Andy?
I have, but I don't know what they do.
I've heard of UTXO Management in particular.
Well, UTXO Management is under BTC Inc.
Yep.
Alongside Bitcoin Magazine. It's the investment arm of BTC Inc. who have funded this, and that is in the small print at the bottom of the article. Starkware, they're valued at $8 billion. $8 billion. One of the other investors of Taproot Wizards. Not even listed on their portfolio page. And then you try and, who funds these guys? Who's worth $8 billion in this space that accelerates layer 2 solutions across blockchains, plural? And you're like, huh? So then you look at their funding round, and lo and behold, Alameda Research were one of their funders to the tune of goodness knows how many freaking. So guys, this isn't about monkey pegs on the base chain. There's something else going on. And I've only come to that conclusion in the last 48 hours of just doing that simple Google, like just follow the money. And I urge anybody else listening to go and do that.
Wow. Definitely suspicious. Starkware funded at $8 billion. I thought that...
No, not funded. Valued at $8 billion.
Excuse me. Yes. Funded at a valuation of $8 billion. I thought that the reason I knew the name was it was like some altcoin, operation, but I'm not even confident in that.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. I mean, where does this start? Where does it come from? And that all of that funding came, and this is in the TechCrunch. Starkware's Series D closed in the midst of the recent crypto market turmoil, literally after Luna crashed.
Yeah, who was funding that, huh?
So, how much does it? How long do they have? The runway for blocking the mempool is long.
Yep.
Are you not getting your transactions confirmed? Is that what you're trying to tell us, Princey? Is Bitcoin broken for you? Is Bitcoin not doing?
It's not broken, and it's still coming in at like 9 minutes and 45 seconds, and everybody's you can't break it. You can certainly jam the radar systems, right? Another classic move when you want to create confusion. And that's what's going on. Confusion is being created.
How big? So how big is the mempool? Like how many megs? Does anyone know?
Let's go to mempool.space. Show sponsor. Nice show.
Nice.
Although, yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, right now it is just a cesspool. Full of this nonsense. Well, there's 360,852 transactions bouncing around in the net. In the mempool there, and the last block cleared at 237 sats per byte, and then you open it up, and it's just full of these. Yeah. Somebody sent 40,000 sats and paid a 31,000 sat fee, like $13 to like when you look. Somebody sent 294 sats for a fee of 19,106. Like, come on. And there was thousands of those.
Yeah, look, it's not great.
Yeah, it's concerning. And I wonder what this leads to. I continue to, but the default is that this is speculators, right? Like trying to flip these JPEGs and make money. But
for a full month?
Yeah, right.
Every 10 minutes?
It's profitable until it's not. But how big is the market really for these NFTs on Bitcoin? I don't know. And then if it's not that big, then what is happening here?
Yeah, is infinite, right? That's the thing. If this is the worst possible scenario, if this is a state coordinated attack, just keep going. And then
I'll take
if you do get that fork event, which fork are BlackRock going to choose once they've encapsulated everybody into their ETF? Guys, we're in the dark world right now. We're in a dark world. You thought you were coming on to talk about macro stuff.
I don't know, Princey. It sounds like FUD to me. I'll be honest with you. If
I hope so.
This seems like pretty low grade attacks. I think that all good Bitcoiners should be vigilant and ask right questions, and as you say, follow the money. And I think it's highly suspicious. I agree with you. I don't know who these Starkware guys are, but on the other hand, I think that this is not. Maybe I'm ignorant, but this is not near the top of my list of worries for Bitcoin.
Well, I know that I have the right guys on the show to have this conversation with, to leave it 48 hours, because I know you will both go and follow that money like bloodhounds, and you will come to much more of a clearer picture than I've come to with my just basic Googling skills. This is something that you guys have done professionally for many years.
I hope one of your listeners goes and does the dirty work for us and contact you, and you have them on, and we do another round. We get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, so it's funny because Princey, you're either on to like the next big attack on Bitcoin, or it's a nothing burger, right? Like
Mhm.
it's either speculators who will eventually get washed out because NFTs run the same course that they did on Ethereum. Too much supply, not enough demand. Who gives a shit? And then
Mhm.
people move on. Or this is some, like in the block size wars, there were a lot of one sat transactions that clogged the mempool. That and it was clear that they were coming from somebody on the Bitcoin Cash side who had a vested interest in making it look like you need bigger blocks in order to eat through the mempool. And so it could be some kind of attack like that, in which case it's super scary. If it's an attack, they're not trying to clog the mempool. They're trying to get a response that, and then it's like choose wisely how you react to this, because if you rush through a soft fork that ends up being exactly the precedent that the attacker is looking for, then maybe you end up accidentally weakening Bitcoin. And so it's kind of it's scary, I guess. I hope it's still just stupid people trying to make a buck, because I think that explains most things in the world. But yeah, it's possible. It's possible your nose is onto the next Bitcoin Cash, Princey.
Well, let's link it back to what we first started talking about with FTX, because Alameda Research was closely linked, if not a direct arm of FTX, and Sam Bankman-Fried, or Fried, however you pronounce his name. What's up with that cat these days? I mean, is he arrested? Is he in jail? Is he just living life in the Caribbean? Like, what's the news? Anybody been watching?
Yeah, I forget what his current
What's
status.
up with
He's
that
in
cat?
jail right now, right? I think he's in jail.
Yeah, he's
I
in
don't
jail.
remember.
He's awaiting sentencing. I think the sentencing is
Awaiting
scheduled maybe
sentencing.
for March, and that's where he is. He's chilling in prison or in jail, I think in New York, right? And that's his reality, and well deserved, in my humble opinion. I think he set back adoption in the space by a couple of years. I thought financial advisors, as an example, wealth managers, were ready for Bitcoin a couple of years ago. I think they might have been, except for what happened with FTX and the other frauds and Ponzi's and schemes that blew up last year. But he was definitely culprit number one, in my humble opinion, for setting back adoption by a while.
Looking forward, Princey, there's the scenario that I'm excited about for 2024 is that historically all the major press about Bitcoin has been negative, right? Like it's FTX, it's Jamie Dimon saying it's garbage. But now with the ETFs, this is why I ultimately think that ETFs are a positive Trojan horse for Bitcoin in the world. And that's my current view, at least, and maybe that'll evolve. But and I feel that way because there's all these big financial giants who have an ETF proposal in the hopper, and then when that gets approved, they have a financial product that they get to charge much higher fees on than your typical ETF. So it's way more attractive to get clients to allocate to that ETF versus any other in their portfolio. And so then the marketing machine turns on from Wall Street, from big finance, saying
The
like,
old dog and pony show, Andy?
Yep. And that will be very effective for the mainstream investor to be like, when you have Fidelity or BlackRock or, whoever you trust with your money, putting out ads saying like, oh, Bitcoin is the future. Oh, you need to have some Bitcoin in your portfolio. Are you ready for the digital age? Make sure you get some BlackRock ETF Bitcoin. Like that is going to be hammered all through 2024 and 2025, 2026. and then that's going to move the needle about the perception of Bitcoin, in the mainstream with regard to should you own some in your portfolio. It will normalize and make it not only normalize but make it the default position for in the minds of everyone that you should own some Bitcoin. It'll take time, but that'll happen. And obviously all these ETF providers are doing it because they're going to make money by selling their own ETF. But in that process, in the process of marketing their ETF, they're marketing Bitcoin. They're saying Bitcoin's a great asset. Get it from us. And so suddenly you've
So our first marketing department is going to be Wall Street. How fucking good is that?
Yeah, that's right. And that's messed up and weird, but it's how you win the middle of the bell curve.
Andy, can we try and sorry, go ahead.
No, I want to take a, well, I don't know if it's a non-popular view, but one of the things with the ETF I like to think about is the counterfactual. Like, for example, what would Bitcoin price be at this point 4 months before the halving, less than 4 months before the halving, if there hadn't been ETF launches, right?
Wow, we are 3 months and change now. That's incredible.
Yeah. And my answer is, would price have been somewhat lower? Probably. Would price be in the 30s? I think so. Like, would it still be in the 20s? I kind of doubt it. And so, we're heading into a year. Yes, the ETF's a big deal, but also the halving is coming up, and probably we're going to get a pivot by the central banks, right? They're probably going to start stimulating again. So, another maybe unpopular view I have is, let's say the ETFs get rejected. Let's say that somehow Gary Gensler rug pulls us all and just, blanket rejection. Haha, got you guys. Totally pranked you. We were doing all this work for you, getting you to update and revise your applications, taking this all seriously, having hours and hours and hours worth of meetings, and just kidding. We're not gonna let it happen. We're gonna go and fight it in the court some more. We're gonna waste some more of our lawyers' time, even though it's doomed to fail. If all that happens, I don't think price is likely to go down that much. I think we're in this different dynamic, right? One of the classic learnings of Bitcoin and the price over cycles is it moves differently in a bear market than in a bull market. When you're in a bear market, bad news dumps the price, and good news doesn't help the price. And in the opposite, when you're in the bull market, right, bad news doesn't dump the price, or at least not by much. You can get sort of transitory short-term moves, but then the bid comes back. And so, I hope the ETFs don't get rejected. I hope everything doesn't go back to the drawing board. I actually honestly don't feel that strongly either way. If they delay the ETF, great. More actual coins in the hands of actual humans, as opposed to more paper Roach Motel Bitcoin. I guess it's not Roach Motel Bitcoin because I guess maybe the coins can come out. But I actually don't think it matters to price that much on the downside, even if it doesn't happen. So it's probably cheap talk, because the odds that they don't get approved, I think, are quite low. So it's unlikely that my hypothesis here will actually get tested. But I'm just not that worried about it.
So the last point I want to kind of bring up with you guys, and it's flying under the radar, are the new accounting rules that are going to come in as of
huge
first quarter of 2025. So can we unpack that for the global audience? Who are FASB? What are these new accounting rules? What's fair value accounting compared to not fair value accounting? I've heard Saylor talk about it on a few pods. He did a great one with Nick Bhatia on his Layered Money pod. Where can you take us? How can you help us all get educated on accounting rules in the US and what this means for companies that have Bitcoin on their balance sheet or should strongly be looking at allocating Bitcoin to their balance sheet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I can take first shot. I'll do it
Yep.
quick, and then a real accountant who's actually studied accounting, that's Jesse, can correct me. So FASB, Financial Accounting Standards Board, this is the body that basically sets the rules, for the significant rules for accounting, at least within the U.S. system. The FASB changed their mind, right, in terms of the treatment of Bitcoin. This was in part, I think, because of I suppose lobbying from Saylor, among others. It used to be that if you held Bitcoin, number only went down, number never went up. If the price went down, you had to mark it down. And if the price went up, I'm talking about in dollar terms, you didn't get to mark it up. So it was a one-way ticket to accounting losses.
Why was that specific? That's really confusing to a lot of people. Why were you not allowed to account for the appreciation?
I think it was an early mistake that the FASB made of just not knowing how to think about Bitcoin as an asset. So they categorized it, I believe, as an intangible asset, which only makes sense in the very literal term of like it is not a physical asset. But normally intangible assets are like goodwill and other things that are intangible, and those you always. That entire category are things that you amortize, you draw down over time, in terms of what their value is. So their value only goes down over time for intangible assets typically, and that's like copyrights. The value of a copyright decays over time because it's a limited contract, and goodwill, same thing. Well, different reasons, but same idea. So they had bucketed it as intangible assets, which was just wrong from the start. But I think it was just a mistake, an early mistake they made of not knowing what kind of asset this was. And so intangible digital coins ended up as intangible assets wrongly.
Andy?
Yeah. So look, if you're a company like Michael Saylor, or you're representing a company, running a company, and you buy some for your treasury to protect against debasement of the currency. Then if it goes down in dollar price, you have to take a loss and show it in your net income, basically that you lost money. Then you don't get to recoup that. So it was a huge deterrent to at least publicly traded companies that have shareholders. It was a deterrent to them buying it in their treasuries like MicroStrategy did. And so that deterrent has now been removed. I am cautiously optimistic that other companies will now adopt Bitcoin as a treasury asset. I think it will take time, but it definitely removes a significant impediment that was standing in the way of corporate adoption for Bitcoin for their treasuries.
Well, let's just say 10 listed companies adopt Bitcoin over the next year, right? I mean, that's very conservative on the back of these new accounting rules. And we know Saylor is out there doing his thing, talking amongst his network, educating people in the boardroom, not just us plebs who just lap it up. I mean, he's out there doing this stuff, right? So
do you think that's conservative, Princey? I might take
10?
the bet. I might take the bet against 10. You said in the next year.
Yeah. Do you not think?
I think 2 years. I like 2 years. I don't know if I like.
But Andy, like risk is off now. Like the ETF. Okay, yeah, we still have to understand it might not get rubber stamped, right? But let's just play this out. ETF gets greenlit. FASB have said what they needed to say. So you've got Gensler saying this is all good. You've got FASB saying this is all good. Everyone's not listening to Warren anyway. So I don't know, is 10 conservative or is 10 a moonshot?
I think you're putting, with a 1 year timeline, it's pretty tight. I mean, one of the things that Saylor did, right, is he laid out the playbook. What's the accounting
Yes.
work? What's the
Yeah.
legal work? What's all the stuff? And
Right.
a bunch of people went to the conference that he put on,
Mhm.
and it was all great. And then 2022 happened, and
Yeah,
I
but
think
Andy,
a
these
lot
are
of
slow burns, right? These are 24-month plays for those people that went to MicroStrategy World and listened to those talks and watched the YouTube streams and listened to McKinsey and whoever else and Deloitte, all of those people, all of the banner names that were there. Yes, they've
Do you
had the
think the
time to
clock started?
digest it.
Yeah, I think the clock restarted. I think the
with
clock
FTX.
restarted last year. I think
Yeah.
now, members of those boards or management teams or who, basically the corporate treasurers and the CFOs are going to go back to the boards and say, hey, you remember that stuff, the Bitcoin stuff we're talking about a couple years ago?
Yeah.
And then boards are going to say, no, I don't remember that. Start over.
Yeah. Yeah, I
You
think
could be
the,
right.
the reputation risk, the career risk that FTX, created was probably a 24-month setback. So we're probably right back where we were.
I hope I'm
All
wrong.
right, Andy.
Quincy.
Okay, then let me rephrase it. 10 globally listed companies.
So I think the problem with that is that the right exercise would really be to go through like the Fortune 2000 and say how many of these companies have are controlled by one person. A controlling vote is held by one person, and that's the truly exceptional thing about MicroStrategies. I forget the exact number, but Saylor held like 90+% of the voting rights. So he whatever he decided he wanted to do, he could do. And so that made it possible for this, rather unconventional maverick play of like, oh, Bitcoin's now our treasury reserve asset. That you just can't do that if you have a board that has to come to consensus, and the board has this obligation to shareholders to be conservative in nature, and you can't be a maverick when you're a board member. And so
when does career risk get flipped? At
yeah,
what
the
price?
career risk gets flipped when it becomes a norm, right? And so that's where like the ETF marketing starts to be valuable, and each successive halving causing a bull market, and to a point where it now is like, okay, Bitcoin just only goes up in value because of its increasing scarcity. That will eventually seep into boardrooms. But
if we are 70,000 by July, and you're the CIO of one of these companies walking in, and the dude's looking at you like, and like we didn't have at least 1% on the table, like
Yeah.
you don't want to be a CIO going into 2024.
It's just not their job. It's not the treasurer's job. When the treasurer can make 5% in T-bills, it's not his job to make 5x on Bitcoin. I think I'll answer the question, when does it become the norm? The year 2029. That's my answer.
You heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. Please, someone. All right, someone please inscribe that on the blockchain. That we need inscribed on the blockchain. Nothing else, none of this other shit. But Andy's predictions, because they come true.
And that will also be roughly 400K Bitcoin. I'm sticking with my original projections from when I published Why Buy Bitcoin in the year 2019 and gave a 10-year view.
Oh wow!
Andy's got his balls out, Jesse. You guys aren't even drinking over there. It's your morning. Have you got Bloody Marys in that thermos, Andy? What's going on?
You'll never know. You'll never know.
This is Bloody Mary thermos. That's interesting. So you were projecting 10 years for 100x, basically. That's how those numbers probably worked out.
Yeah, it was. I think at the time it was about 8K. It was about 8K. So yeah, 50. Call it 50x on a 10-year.
Interesting. I hope we're.
So,
I think
so far we're basically on track. I mean, we're ahead of schedule, but that's because we're in the bull market, right? So if you smooth the 4-year cycle around it, I would say it's basically on track.
We'll see what happens with this bull market. I keep seeing. I'm kind of a man of two minds recently. I see the case for like 120,000, and I also see the case for like 300,000, and I can't make up my mind.
I also see those cases, but neither of those is 400K, right? So we're still
Right.
one cycle away.
Yeah, and so I would bet we touch 400K in 6 years, which I guess would be your time frame.
Andy, do we have your notepad there again? Like the notes that you brought to this interview?
This one?
Just up.
Number
Yes.
went up.
Number went up. Okay, yes, that is correct. Number will go up. How did we get into price predictions? You fucking guys. Every time.
Yeah, we got too excited. We were talking about FASB, and we can talk more about that.
We were talking about like really boring accounting stuff, and then you got all carried away with 400K by 2029.
You were the one who got into it's going to be 10 public companies adopting
globally public.
Next year.
I stand by that. There's going to be some announcements. There just has to be.
Yeah, there must be in some. Yeah,
I'll bet you one wizard against that.
Oh no!
Don't you put that hurt on me, Andrew Edstrom. I don't want that in my life.
I'll bet you three chill frogs.
All right, Jesse, come on, bring this back to boring accounting work, FASB, fair value accounting.
Yeah.
What does that do? Okay, what does that do? Here's one. What does that do for MicroStrategy stock in the first quarter of 2025? Because we'll be above 60,000. Let's say that is almost guaranteed, unless there is some kind of absolute complete nonsense going on.
Yeah, so I did a bit of a deeper dive into what the FASB rules mean for MicroStrategy and in general. And yeah, I think your timeline there is the right one of like, what does this mean in 2025? What will this have done for MicroStrategy by that point? So point of clarification there, the FASB is allowing companies to opt into fair value accounting starting now. And then it's an expectation a year from now. And so again, what that means, the fair value accounting means that you get to, when the value of your assets drop, you book that loss. Shows up on your income statement as a loss, a line item that's real. So that in the event of a loss that happens today, and has been the case with the intangible asset treatment. The fair value accounting, has that same provision for losses, but it also it expects that you book a profit if the value of the assets goes up in a quarter. So then you, for your 10Q report for that quarter, you're booking a profit from the appreciation of that asset. And that's what is very interesting. I think Michael Saylor's right about. So he said that this is one of the three biggest drivers for Bitcoin. Bitcoin's price is FASB updated guidance. And I think he's right, because what this does for the accounting for MicroStrategy will be pretty sensational going into the bull market, because if Bitcoin's price goes up and they're all in on Bitcoin, they will be booking massive profits each quarter because the value of their Bitcoin holdings goes up. And it won't change so then looking at, what's the stock price of MicroStrategy in 2025? I don't think it changes the stock price, because Wall Street's smart enough to be able to factor in unrealized profits into their valuations for what's the true value of MicroStrategy. But what it will change is the perception.
Are they smart enough to value in unrealized profits on the Bitcoin price when they have no idea? But go ahead.
Maybe there's some
points taken.
But on the whole, yeah. But what it does change is the perception of MicroStrategy, because now you're talking about every quarter, MicroStrategy is booking multi-billion-dollar profits, and they look like geniuses. And every treasurer, every CFO wants to be in that position of like, look, I just created massive uplift for the business through adopting this, accounting option of using Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset. And look at what it's doing for MicroStrategy, and look what it's doing for the CFO, the treasurer. Everyone in the finance department looks like a genius because they're booking these massive profits because they adopted Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset. And that, I think, is the impact of this. Is the headlines for MicroStrategy are going to be relentless for the next 18 months. Multi-billion-dollar after multi-billion-dollar profit quarters just from the fair value accounting of their Bitcoin. They're a medium-sized business, really, but they have this massive pool of Bitcoin. They're going to see billion-dollar profits every quarter, and everyone wants to be in those shoes. And so that, I think, changes the dialogue among CFOs about, hey, maybe we should try to capture some of this juice too, get some of this uplift from Bitcoin, get these awesome headlines that MicroStrategy is getting. And so I think that the shift in the narrative, the dialogue, there's going to be questions. Like, people are going to be reaching out to MicroStrategy, like, how are you guys booking these billion-dollar profits? Like, do you think this is going to keep happening? People are going to be interested in why MicroStrategy has done what they're doing, and are going to be a lot more open to following suit when you get credit for it. Because right now, you just look bad. The only possible option is for you to look bad if you adopt a Bitcoin treasury strategy when it comes to your quarterly earnings reports. Because what you're required to do is you have to mark the so if intra-quarter, if the price of Bitcoin drops, suddenly it was to drop within the quarter down to $3,000 and then recover at the end of the quarter, you have to mark your Bitcoin value for that quarter down to the low point, because it was impaired at that point and you're not allowed to recover. So you're only incurring losses. And so you only ever look bad when it comes to quarterly earnings reports right now. But what about tax? Fair value makes you look like a hero.
What about tax, Jesse? Is there no tax benefit to booking the loss?
That's a good question. Yeah, you do get the tax. That's the one thing, is you get the tax credit, I guess.
And just under the new rules, you still can't use your average price of purchase. You have to mark it to the price of, like, the end of the business day of that quarter.
Yeah, you would mark it to the end of the quarter. But that's the thing about the current intangible asset guidance, is that you have to mark it to the low point. So whenever that was in the quarter, that's what you have to mark it to. But with the fair value accounting, you mark it at the end of the quarter. So
Andy, like right now, with his 189,000 Bitcoin, if that goes up just $10,000 in one quarter, that's $1.9 billion.
And that's going to happen every single quarter for the next 6 quarters, I think.
Chances are good.
So for anybody watching this that's excited about the ETF, fuck the ETF. Like, if you want to get, if you don't understand self-custody and Bitcoin, as we do on this call, why would you? Why would you buy a BlackRock ETF when you can buy MicroStrategy? And he's not done stacking. This is 189,000 he has today. How many is he going to buy next month? And the month after, the month after that?
It's a fair question. I mean, it is worth asking. It's a cash flowing business. So,
yes, which he's using to DCA.
Right, which he's using to DCA. And so instead of, I mean, I can't remember if he couched it this way, but yeah, one way to look at it is as an ETF that, instead of having a management fee, a loss, basically a tax on the system, a tax on the assets, and therefore the tax on the whole the investor. It has the opposite. It's actually generating cash flows. So I think you price that. I do think it trades at a premium, most likely, versus pure net asset value. So if the ETF trades at net asset value because you can create and destroy shares at par, then yeah, I think there should be some embedded premium probably to MicroStrategy stock, since if you do a sum of the parts, we call the sum of the parts, you say, okay, here's the value of the Bitcoin on the balance sheet, here's the value of the operating business. You put those two together, the business is worth something. I mean, I haven't looked at the numbers recently. If it was generating, I'm just making up numbers, 100 million a year in cash flow, and you put a 15 times multiple on that, it's worth $1.5 billion for the business or something. I'm just making up numbers that should be additive to the billions that the balance sheet Bitcoin is worth. So yeah, I think it ought to arguably trade at some premium. Now, the magnitude of that premium, I'm not entirely sure. The market will decide.
Yeah, that sounds right. Small premium. Yeah.
So, all right. I think that leaves us on a positive note. Very bullish. Always bullish on Bitcoin. Bullish on Bitcoiners. Bullish on you two gents.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you coming on again. And I've got to ask you the final question. I know you've faced it many times before, and I can't remember every answer you've ever come up with. But if you had just one last orange pill left to give to somebody, who would you give it to and why?
Okay, me first. So I give it to Dad. So Dad, I thought, was bought in on Bitcoin. I thought he got it, and then he's kind of been backtracking, or at least in the last bear market, he was kind of backtracking. I thought that he'd reached a level of conviction that would endure the next bear market. I'm talking about winding back the clock a few years here. The next bear market being the one that has now concluded. But I'm not sure that it all stuck. So love you, Dad. You get the next orange pill from Andy.
I know he listens, so a big shout out to Mr. Edstrom. Your son's coming for you, Jesse.
Yeah, in the past I said Xi Jinping, and I think Ray Dalio, or maybe it was Larry Fink. I think that
I thought it was Shakira.
I never said that one.
No, okay, wrong guy.
That's a
sorry.
good one, no. I have been thinking about how Larry Fink at times has been saying, like, genuinely, like, I actually wonder if Larry Fink gets it, and actually actually has a good heart. Like, I sort of wonder if he has, a lot of these Wall Street titans, I think, view themselves as like American success stories, and really value American values. And then, Bitcoin embodies those American values that they have sort of idealized their whole lives. And I feel like Larry Fink could be that could actually be happening to him, which would be incredible. And so I'd say I'd give it to Larry Fink to try to finish that process. Because it would be remarkable to have Larry Fink join the, like, Paul Tudor Jones, Bill Miller, Stan Druckenmiller crew, of, like, what, this Bitcoin thing is as American as apple pie, and it's good for the world, and I'm gonna put my weight behind it to the extent that my job allows me to, because that would be a huge ally for Bitcoin. Who knows if that's actually the case?
Get him over the finish line. He's close.
I think
close.
so.
Yeah. Well, we all know it. It's a mind virus, and it takes over absolutely every cell in your body, and for the better. For the most part, it will expose the charlatans, and we've seen that happen. And Bitcoin derangement syndrome is a real thing. So we got a busy year ahead of us, guys. As always, thank you for coming on the show. We'll do perhaps a Q1 roundup. We won't leave it so long next time. I know we all get super busy. What do you need to shill, and where can people find you?
Yeah. Final thought there of like all the macro stuff we've been talking about. I think the halving will do what it has always done and dwarf all these other considerations in terms of its significance for Bitcoin and the price in particular. So that's truly the story, will be the story of the next 18 months. So excited about that. 3 months and change away, and then the mechanics are set in motion. And as always, the day itself will be unextraordinary, and it will feel like nothing, like it didn't work, because nothing will have changed. But behind the scenes, under the surface, that the supply shortage will start accumulating there, and that'll set in motion the parabolic advance that we'll see over the next 18 months. Anyway, you can find me on Twitter at Jesse Myers, at crises, CROESUS_BTC. I've been very busy launching and building our company OnRamp Bitcoin, and we have established the best practices around multi-institution custody for Bitcoin holders who, for whatever reason, either can't take self-custody, or feel a little uncomfortable about it all being in self-custody, in particularly with regard to inheritance and inheritance planning, and also don't want to trust a third-party custodian like Coinbase. Multi-institution custody provides the best balance. In fact, in my opinion, is better than either of the two, self-custody or third-party custody, because you get you get 3 different institutions holding a key on your behalf in a multi-sig vault, and only acting at your direction as the end user. So you get best-in-class key management, but you retain control of your assets. So that's what we've been building at OnRamp. It's been a very exciting year and a half of building that, and really starting to scale now. And part of that has been bringing Andy on board to lead our managed wealth efforts, which Andy can tell a little bit about here. But yeah, if you're interested at all in multi-institution custody, check us out at onrampbitcoin.com.
Love to see it. Yeah. All right. Twitter, Edstrom Andrew. And OnRamp, I couldn't be more excited. One of my missions as it relates to Bitcoin is to get Bitcoin safely into the portfolios of all the people who have wealth, particularly in America. Keeping America safe for Bitcoin means getting it into people's portfolios. And I'm not talking about paper Bitcoin or Roach Motel Bitcoin. I'm talking about Bitcoin that can actually be withdrawn to self-custody someday in the future. And I think the last cycle taught us that single institution custody can go wrong. And so anyway, I couldn't be more excited about building this product for OnRamp. Yeah, it's going to be a big year for us in 2024, helping not just financial advisors and wealth managers, but all kinds of people get their coins safely custodied, all the while educating them about Bitcoin and educating them about self-custody.
And what a team, guys. I'm very bullish, really looking forward to Jesse. We're going to do a rip about the whole journey of OnRamp in January, and Andy will get the band back together, like I said, towards the end of Q1, and we can have a discussion again. And it's always fun to hang with you guys. Really appreciate everything that both of you have done in the space, all of your writing, all of your podcasts, building.
Speaking of podcasts, Andy will be doing a lot more of that soon, and we'd love to have you, Princey, join Andy at some point for Andy.
That's true. How could I forget the Scarce Assets podcast which I will be launching. First guest will be the one and only Preston Pish. Very excited for it. We're going to be recording next week. And yes, Princey, definitely want you on my pod.
Absolutely.
And or one of the stable of podcasts that OnRamp is producing.
Yeah. And
More
Princey,
pods.
whole,
Pods. Not people out there are going to be like, what?
not
What did
another
Walker
pod.
call his one? Just another fucking Bitcoin podcast. They're like, no, Walker, we need more. We need more. Keep bringing the noise.
Yeah, and the goal of that one, Scarce Assets, is to really talk about the topics that matter to wealth managers, and obviously with regard to Bitcoin and scarce assets in general. So, Princey, you'll be a perfect voice to have on that one at some point here.
I hope I don't disappoint. Well, thank you so much, guys, for coming on. First ever live, which is a great one to see, because Andy being part of that, because first ever Bitcoiner to be interviewed by Lauren as well. So you carry that responsibility, and looking forward to seeing you guys. Will you be in person at any conferences? Are you coming to Europe to Shill on Ramp at any point? What's the travel plans? Andy, I know you've got travel plans lined up, holiday and everything, but how will we meet you at a meetup or at a conference on our side of the pond?
All right, I'll go first. So I'm a yes on Pacific Bitcoin. Come to LA. Come to the conference. It's like a mile from my house. Bad OPSEC, I know.
Perfect.
No, seriously though, it's a great time. I don't know yet whether I'm going to make it to Nashville. That's a maybe. I would like to make it to Texas. I'd like to make it to BitBlock Boom. I don't have plans to get to Bitcoin conferences in Europe at this point, unfortunately. But those could change.
Right. Well, hit us up when you do your holiday, and we'll get you plugged in some meetups at the very least. And the plebs will look after you and your family like royalty. You're welcome, all of you. Crisis, what's going on?
I'm keeping my calendar clear of conferences simply because I don't know how I would fit them in at the moment with all of the demands of growing OnRamp, which is great problems to have. But we've been very busy building all this stuff and bringing on clients. So no current plans for Bitcoin conferences, but maybe Nashville and probably BitBlock Boom. Wow, that's hard to say.
It is. It's a tongue twister, Gary. What are you doing to us? We're simple folk.
Yeah. So yeah, not sure, but you can always find me on Twitter.
All right, guys. Well, have a great day ahead of you. Thank you again for coming on.
Always fun, Princey.
Always a pleasure.
See you.